in a dimly lit town in the heart of Jos, Nigeria. Chukwuma grew up in a small, quiet town where appearances meant everything. He had crooked teeth, uneven features, and a lanky frame that seemed to repel women. From a young age, he became the butt of cruel jokes, the target of ridicule, and the recipient of constant rejection. Girls laughed at him, called him names, and dismissed him without a second thought. He was the ugly boy no one wanted to be seen with. Chukwuma, an insecure 23-year-old, cleaned the cold steel tables. His teeth were crooked, his frame awkward, and rejection was his constant companion. He looked at his reflection in the stainless steel surfaces and sighed. Life had been cruel. Despite his intelligence and hard-working nature, no one saw beyond his looks. When his uncle, Uncle Joe, who worked at the local morgue, offered him a job, Chukwuma reluctantly agreed. At first, the job was unsettling, washing corpses and preparing them for burial, but it paid the bills. At first, Chukwuma struggled with the gruesome nature of the job, cleaning bodies, preparing them for burial, and spending long nights alone in the cold, sterile environment. But over time, he grew numb to it. The lifeless faces of the dead began to feel more familiar than the living ones who always judged him. One lonely night, as he sat in the morgue staring at a lifeless woman's body, something inside him snapped. The rejection, the humiliation, the years of loneliness, it all boiled over. In a moment of desperation, he did something he could never take back. That night, he crossed the line, and his life changed forever. The lifeless woman became his solace. At his age, he couldn't still be a virgin, he thought. That was the night his addiction began. He had sex with the lifeless body all through that night, and he felt like the king of the world. Years passed. Chukwuma saved every naira he earned and underwent drastic cosmetic surgery. His teeth were fixed, his body sculpted, and his confidence rebuilt. By the time he turned 30, he had transformed into a strikingly handsome man. Women who had once mocked him now vied for his attention. They flirted, smiled, and even threw themselves at him. But their newfound interest only deepened his bitterness. Where were they when he needed kindness? When he was broken and alone? But Chukwuma's dark addiction remained. No matter how beautiful the women were, he couldn't shake his obsession. Dead women turned him on. He invested all his savings into opening his own funeral home, ensuring he had access to what he craved. To the outside world, he was a successful businessman, but in the shadows, he indulged in his twisted compulsion of sleeping with dead bodies. Societal pressure eventually pushed him to marry. He met Edeora, a sweet and unsuspecting woman, and together they appeared to be the perfect couple. But even as he played the role of a devoted husband, his nights were spent in secret. Edeora noticed his frequent late-night absences but assumed he was working late. Edeora became pregnant, and Chukwuma's life took a sudden turn. Concerned about raising their child in the city, Edeora insisted they move to a quiet village in Plateau State. Far from any morgue or cemetery, Chukwuma found himself spiraling into withdrawal. The move cut him off from his access to the morgue, leaving him restless and agitated. He tried to suppress his urges, but the addiction gnawed at him. One evening, in a moment of weakness, he went to a local bar and struck up a conversation with a woman. She was lively and talkative, but as the conversation progressed, she began sharing stories of rejecting men in her youth, laughing about how she wouldn't settle for someone unattractive. Her words triggered something dark inside Chukwuma. Old memories of humiliation and pain came flooding back. Enraged, Chukwuma snapped. In a blind fury, he hit her, causing her to fall and hit her head. The woman died instantly. Overcome with a mix of guilt and his twisted compulsion, he took the lifeless body and repeated the act that had haunted him for years. He had sex repeatedly with her lifeless body. From that night on, Chukwuma began luring women to secluded areas, killing them, and using their bodies to satisfy his addiction. The once rejected boy had turned into a monstrous predator, unable to escape the curse that bound him. Edeora, now heavily pregnant, grew suspicious of Chukwuma's frequent late-night disappearances. One night, she followed him and stumbled upon his grim secret. Hidden in a makeshift mortuary in their home, she found the bodies of his victims. The sight was horrifying. The sight of her husband crouched over one of the corpses broke her. Edeora screamed, alerting the neighbors. Chukwuma tried to explain, to justify his actions as the product of years of rejection and loneliness, but it was too late. The community descended upon him. In the courtroom, Chukwuma's dark past was laid bare. He spoke of years of rejection, loneliness, and the bitterness that consumed him, but his words fell on deaf ears. He was sentenced to life in prison, where he would have nothing but time to confront the monster he had become. Chukwuma was arrested and sentenced to life in prison. His once beautiful face became a grotesque reminder of the monster within. Edeora, heartbroken and ashamed, left with her child, vowing never to speak of her husband again. In his prison cell, Chukwuma stared at the walls, haunted by the faces of his victims. No cosmetic surgery could ever fix the scars on his soul. As Chukwuma sat in his cell, muttering to himself, some scars, he realized too late, could never be healed. Rejection breeds resentment, but what you choose to do with your pain defines who you are.